Отже, я зараз не сумніваюсь. З'єднання є, так? Пані Олені, ви мене чуєте зараз? Так. Так. А я вас тихенько чую. Ви зараз...
Так, це, мабуть, через мікрофон. Так краще чутно?
Так, прекрасно.
Так, я повернула мікрофон. Так. Я зараз не чую. О, тепер чую. Так, так, вірно, так. Так.
Добре, дякую.
Розмовляю.
Доброго дня, пані та панове.
Пропоную зайняти свої місця. Ще раз усіх вітаю і
Hello there. Let's start.
проводимо захід публічний активного
Today we want to have a public event that's called Ivanchyk Strategic Priority for Ukraine, organized by Astarta-Kyiv with the cooperation with the Ministry of Social Policy and Public Sector.
кілька організаційних моментів.
We have a couple of administrative announcements. During the red alert, you need to proceed to the minus. First floor, our team will evaluate within the skills and interpretation. You have with text on the table to your left. You can use that. I would like to remind you that we have a stream, online stream, so please use your mic to speak. Now, we are here to discuss the topic that affects economic stability and state security. The full-scale invasion set up the demographic change and increase in people with disabilities. So active longevity is not just a social policy, it's a component of national security. And today's goal is not just to talk about it. We will show you some stats, we'll present our experience, and we'll show you some partnership options on the government and ministry level. I'm giving the floor to Viktor Ivanchyk, CEO of Astarta-Kyiv, in Ukrainian business that makes active longevity happen. Thank you. Thank you. Dear friends, partners, colleagues, family, to review what is comfortable the topic that we're going to discuss is quite relevant today. It's really not about just social options, it's about resilience and survival. Importantly, it is greater on that. It's not connect some demography and population displacement of population who have resisting economic loss on our we can anticipate important situation. We need to bring experience and innovation together. It's a possibility to respond our national values and identity, not when they can't be formed, but by intervening in all processes in the country and playing a crucial role in this process. Example, during the conversation before we started, we are using examples of countries where active longevity is no go. I participated in a meeting of our board in the Committee Technology Company. And first of all, the directors was doing this. He was brought to 94, there was a couple were 94 and 95 years old respectively. In the meeting, during the dinner afterwards, quite surprised, not just it was impossible. And they said that's just a normal thing to do for us. And quite a couple of years ago, the family sold his family plane, and his wife says, I forbid him to fly because, it's crazy. And then the family started speaking and said, my older brother is 98 and he's director, but his young wife is 24. I don't even know if he's a million. So, I think it's examples show that there have been no limitations for people who retired. We need to extend the young age at least to 60 years old. And we can just have 12-year cycles, maturity, and wisdom and spiritual enlightenment. That's we actually seeing it with still. It just matters how we are active. I think we need to exchange our ideas, our practices, to become strong together, to have this partnership with businesses that I represent, social institutions and governmental institutions. We have representatives of the presidential office and the cabinet of ministers, and representatives of embassies of the UK and Switzerland, and I think we have some other representatives. This professional community gives us confidence that as a result of this meeting, we will find the practices that will allow us to build the new independent Ukraine. Thank you. The strategy of democratic development of Ukraine until 2040 is a framework document that defines priorities of the state policy in response to demographic challenges, the region and migration and market human capital. Among key areas is active longevity, return of Ukrainians, decreasing death rates. The strategy changes its approach. I'm giving the floor to Oksana, Zholnovych, the Minister of Social Policy of Ukraine. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm extremely happy to be here in this wonderful and thank you, Astarta, for prioritizing these efforts, and this is not our first project. Yeah. It's operators. I've collected some numbers and statistics. We decided that when you take something as an example, it just sounds a bit different. So, I'm 47. From this building, but my employment is temporary. I understand that I will need to look for a different job when I will turn around 50. This will not be an easy task to do for me. Considering my age, because this is the age when I become segregated and excluded, when I'm not going to be an attractive employee anymore. Do I perceive myself as that? Not really, but I feel, and as Viktor Ivanchyk mentioned, with energy and experience and confidence, what I do is this potential, and this potential is discarded for many people. It becomes irrelevant. People haven't reached won't even make it to an interview in just a couple of years. When I submit my resume, my year of birth will become a form of criteria to be started and nobody will see my energy
І на цьому, скажімо
at
так,
all.
всі
And
речі
that will be the
завершуються.
end of it.
Разом з тим, а що ми маємо
At
для
the same time,
економіки?
what do we
Це
allow
тільки
for
буде
the economy?
персонально моя проблема
They're
як
going to be
людини.
my personal
Очевидно,
problem
що
as,
ні.
as an
Адже
individual
сьогодні у нас
independent.
пенсіонерів і працюючих один до
Because
одного.
today
Сьогодні ми вже маємо
the rate
частку
of
людей літнього віку в загальному
pensioners
зріст
to
суспільства майже 20%.
employees is one
Тобто
to
це
one.
велика частка,
It's,
велика складова. І якщо її
it's a great
викинути з
problem
економічного
today. And if
життя,
we
а ще
just
туди
exploit it
захопити
from our economic
плюс,
life,
тобто людей,
and
які ще принаймні
so
15
when we
років за
have
законодавством
50
мали
plus
би активно вкладатися
people
в економіку
who
країни, то ми
sort of
собі
invested
далі,
a
по
lot into
суті,
the economy,
відрізаємо крила.
we are
Ми
imposing a
створюємо
lot of
ситуацію,
limitation
за
on our
якої
country.
сьогодні
A
на ринку,
situation
тобто
where
я викидаю
on the
державний
living
сектор і все,
market,
що
and I'm not going to
фінансується
talk about
за
the public
бюджетні
sector and
кошти,
everything
на
that is
ринку
funded
працює всього
from the
6
budget.
мільйонів
We have
людей.
only
6
7 million
мільйонів
people in the
на
market,
30
living
країн.
markets.
Все інше це в той чи інший
Uh,
спосіб утримується.
30 million. Others are
Наскільки
just
це реально бути
recipients of that
успішною, багатою, розвинутою країною за
budget.
такого
I
співставлення?
think we really
Ми
good
мусимо
about
всі про
the
це подумати і
country.
починати з того, щоб
And this kind of
знімати
says we need to
якісь різні
start
стереотипи
by getting rid of
з
stereotypes
своїх думок, своїх дій,
in
своїх
our
політик,
thoughts
своїх
and
практик.
actions and
І
policy
тут
and
я звертаюся
practices.
і до
And
бізнесу, і до
I'm
наших
appealing to our
міжнародних партнерів,
businesses
до
and our
громадських
international
організацій. Ми
partners and
реально всі,
civil
як
society
суспільство, і особливо
organizations.
активна наша
Society,
частина,
we
маємо
are an
вже
active
почати
part of the
не тільки
society.
про це
We need to
говорити,
start,
але ми вже
not
маємо
just
почати
talk
діяти.
about it,
Ми
but we need
повинні
to take action.
активно допомагати
We need
людям,
to
які
actively help
заходять в літній вік,
people
зберігати свої
who
компетенції,
become
набувати нових
older. We
компетенцій.
need to help
Адже
them
це не тільки
acquire new
про
competencies
активну
and
зайнятість,
retain
це
their
в тому
existing
числі
competencies. It's
про
not just
зменшення
about
року і
active
часу періоду,
employment, it's
коли ця людина
and
потребуватиме
also
фізичного
about
перегляду. Тому що що
decreasing the amount of
відбувається в
time that
багатьох
these
випадках, коли
people will
люди
need care.
передчасно отримують деменцію чи
When
хворобують
people
Альцгеймера чи
receive
якісь інші
dementia
хвороби,
and
які не
Alzheimer's and other
дозволяють їм бути
diseases that
самостійними.
don't
Це
allow
означає,
them
що
to be
хтось з
autonomous.
дорослих
That
активних
means that
працездатних
some
членів сім'ї
uh,
звільниться з роботи.
active adults will need
Втратить
to
роботу.
quit their
Тому
job.
що в нашій
They will
культурі
lose their
є внутрішні
jobs
зобов'язання доглядати своїх
because
батьків.
in our
Так
culture it's
відбулось з
an
моєю
obligation
мамою і
to take care
тіткою,
of the elders.
коли вони змушені були
The same
обмежити свою
happens with my
працездатність
mother and my
і
parents
роботу,
when they
доглядаючи
used
за моєю
to
бабцею, яка була абсолютно
quit their job
чудовою,
to
ефективною,
take
дуже
care about
енергійною жінкою. Але,
my
звісно, слава
grandmother.
Богу, дожила до
She was
90
quite
років, може
active and
вікові
she
травми це було
survived
більше.
90 years
Але
of
вона могла
old if it
поставити
were to COVID, but she
грядку на плиту і піти. Ну,
at
і ми
least
розуміємо, що в приватному будинку це було призвичайно.
she
Таке
put,
життя.
put
Просто в її період ніхто їй не говорив,
something
що
hot on the stove and
працювати з собою,
this can lead to a
можливість
fire.
вдосконалювати свої когнітивні функції, такі інші.
We need
Оце
to
все про активне довголіття.
improve our
І тому, коли
cognitive
ми говоримо про зайнятість, коли ми говоримо про
ability. And this is what active longevity is about. When we talk about our skills and when we say we need to keep learning,
як дуже часто закликають,
it's not because we as a government, as a state, we need to deprive people of their comfort. No, it's about your lifestyle. And I remember another example that I learned from the USA when I visited as part of the Kean scheme. This group was 25 years old, and one of these attractions, when we toured around the city, they showed me a neighborhood that they had to construct the buildings and it was 17 years old. So they want to build a new building because the one that they had, they just got bored of it. And I really want every family, every old couple, 75 plus, I really wanted to build a new house in autumn. I wish they had these dreams and planning. That is quality of life. That is longevity. That is active longevity. However, Can somebody say this? No. That's my personal choice. I need to learn something new, like a foreign language. I need to within sports. So to kill myself, to make sure that my son doesn't have to quit his job to kill me. And I really wish we could talk about this in a good way. I wish we could do something to make proactive longevity becomes a norm in our country. The inclusion policy for older people becomes a priority. We need to respect our older people and which we could use the experience like in other countries, including everyone, to create, to improve our quality of life and to make sure we are resilient, regardless of what happens every 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I'm sure that we'll have a good discussion today. We will see some good results, and this will inspire each and every one of you to move forward and build policies with every step. Thank you.
Дякуємо, пані Оксано.
Thank you, Oksana.
Давайте ми будемо
Well,
слідкувати зараз за перебігом подій
that's
в нашому повітряному просторі. А зараз пропоную продовжити.
panels,
Завдяки
but
фінансуванню збройної
meanwhile we
стабільності та
will
безпеки конфліктів,
start
заснованого
talking about
урядом
our topic.
Великобританії, у 2023-2024 роках
2023
Асtarті вдалося реалізувати
2024
пілотний
has
проект
started
Сейф
could implement a safe space program going to the UK, and it becomes a fruit of cooperation between Astarta and the Ministry of Social Policy as part of the resilience efforts in the country. We were input through the government of the UK and the continuation of the strategy is one of the important steps. We are giving the floor to Rachel Kean, head of social agreement with services.
We're good.
Hello, everyone. I am very sorry. My Ukrainian is still, 3.5 years later, absolutely rubbish. So if you need translation, I believe it is available. Is everyone good? Oh, of course. So first of all, I'm really, really delighted to be here. I think this is an incredibly important, first of all, it's an incredibly important area, but it's also incredibly important how significant the turnout is today. We do a lot of these events. I think we're very used to them and we're very used to talking about documents, but sometimes it's a reminder about what we're really here and what we're really talking about. And demographics is data, which is incredibly helpful right now. It is critical that we are able to make decisions that are evidence-based, that are informed by lived experience. Fundamentally, demographics is also about people. It is about who we are, it's about who we will be, but it's also about who we could be. And I think this is one of those really important documents that really looks at that potential, not just where we are now. The UK has always been proud to fund this work, and that's because fundamentally investing in people is investing in Ukraine, because people are Ukraine's greatest resource. We know that. We know government of Ukraine knows that. We know civil society in Ukraine knows that. And we're hoping that donors are learning that as we go along. But Ukraine has experienced a demographic shock. We know there are mass casualties. We know that there is increasing disability violence, as well as a rapidly aging population. But demographic resilience doesn't mean being afraid for the future. Instead, it means seeing the opportunities as well that are in front of us. We know that with a population by 2035, a third will be over 60. And, the truth is that longer lives are one of society's greatest achievements in the UK and Ukraine. It is something we are all having to prepare for. And it is something we all need to recognize. It is part of our life course, but it is also something that, again, there is huge potential when it comes to our economic life, our social fabric, And I think it's important to say we recognize the contributions that older Ukrainians have already been making, on the front lines, have been making in their communities. Well, we also know they've been amongst the hardest hit by Russian aggression, that over a third of those affected have been over 60 already. And yet, one of the things we really want to recognize is that globally, by 2035, the population worldwide, 1 in 2 will be over 50. So population aging is something that we all need to prepare for. Excuse me, while I turn my page, because I don't actually prepare for this. And I think that's something, it's not just about preparing, it's about embracing fundamentally. In the FCDO, when I wrote the Disability Rights and Inclusion Strategy, I put at the centre of it a life course approach. And a life course approach means that you're striving to protect and promote the rights of all people at all stages, but you also recognise there is a diversity in that population and that older people with disabilities, are a diverse group. They have different needs, priorities and requirements, and they will have different needs, priorities and requirements in Ukraine's recovery. Sometimes I worry a little bit about we can use language of from dependency to agency. And I think agency is critically important, but I think we also need to recognize that every person has inherent value as they are. Every person is entitled to full equal participation in society as rights holders, in dignity, with autonomy, and as experts in their own lives. And that's why I was really delighted to hear the Minister talk about respect for older people and for their experience and their expertise. Because we have a moral obligation to build a fairer and brighter Ukraine, whether it is those who are writing state policy, whether it is those organizations supporting implementation, or whether it's those of us funding it. It's the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do, and it's the sustainable thing to do. From the UK approach, we know that a disability and an age-inclusive approach, is really the only option we have, and it benefits all of us, not just those groups that we are specifically talking about. Ukraine's made huge strides with the demographic strategy, with the barrier-free strategy, with the social service strategy, but these can't just exist on paper. It's critical now that we support their meaningful, their active implementation at all levels, because this is a society that we're working to build together. And I think, recognizing that enabling environments that break down barriers, that break down those institutional barriers, those physical barriers, those communication barriers, that's something that all of us should be doing across all of our work. It's something why it enables us collectively to build towards something bigger, something brighter, where Ukraine can be not just a model for Ukraine, but a model for the world, for all of us right now, because sometimes in the darkest days also comes huge opportunity. And I think that's what we should be in awe of, is that when I started 2 weeks after the war began, immediately I started working with Ministry of Social Policy. Their ambition for reform and the ambition of civil society, of private sector, of other actors in Ukraine has not wavered. Actually, it's got stronger. And so if Ukraine can be doing this, and a slight call out to other donors and other international actors in the room, then we have a duty to support that. We have a duty to step up as Ukraine has stepped up. So I'm not going to go in depth about what the UK is doing, but just to flag, this work is supported under what we call the Spirit Programme. It's working to build capacity, to improve coordination, and to really support Ukraine in modelling innovative solutions that are Ukrainian-led in the social sector. It looks at social protection, social services, and social inclusion, working together with the Ministry of Social Policy, UNICEF, the World Bank, and other ministries in the government, as well as some of our brilliant civil society partners. I think hearing the minister speak about her own life, when she said she was 46, my immediate reaction was to say, no, of course you're not. But why is that a bad thing? That should be a good thing, a wonderful thing, that we have a diversity of ages in this room. And to be frank, we could do with a bit more of a diversity of ages in this room and in every room we're in at the moment. But I think together we can work to amplify the rights, the voices, the choices, the visibility of older Ukrainians, of Ukrainians with disabilities, of marginalized groups, of all of us, whether that's through inclusive labour market interventions, whether that's through social protection reform, whether that's through health services in the community. The truth is that once the minister said, and this was factually, Ukraine, I think you can consider, that everybody is important in Ukraine. Everyone has a role to play in recovery. I think it's now our duty to take that from a vision to a reality, because we have a shared belief in that future. We have a shared belief in that vision for that inclusive, rights-based, barrier-free society for all. And so when I say I'm proud to be here, I really am. And I think this is a wonderful piece of work that I hope we will long continue to support, because we also recognize this is a long-term process. Some of this work took the UK 50 years, 2 world wars. We still haven't got it right. So I think, we have to have some reasonable expectations of Ukraine that we are with you together. When we made the 100-year partnership, that's a 100-year partnership. So, let's make the next 100 years the best 100 years yet. So thank you so much. I apologize for taking so long. I'm a bit passionate about this, but I'm delighted to be here, and I look forward to the rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your support and hope for further partnership. Продовжуємо.
І переходимо до
Well,
нашої
we
аналітичної
just move
частини.
on to an analytical bit. The Ukrainian experts have conducted a well-founded study of barriers and the prospects of longevity in Ukraine. And now to make this presentation, we're inviting Ms. Elena Ruban, business consultant, co-founder of Ruban Litvinova Social Impact Agency. You're welcome. The mic is yours.
Колеги, я вас рада вітати
Dear colleagues, I'm so
сьогодні
happy to welcome you all here today, and I have a very important task before me to talk about what we have been able to uncover. And our task was to try and understand what are some of the current status quos with the healthy longevity in Ukraine, how the environment, whether it's conducive or, on the other hand, limiting, restricting the health and opportunities for active life for people of older age, if there are any barriers or any preconceptions in our minds, in our way of thinking of Ukrainians that prevent us from being healthy. So this was a desk study. We leaned on the data that we have in Ukraine, and honestly, I will tell you, really, we did lack a lot of information, and there were some topics that we explored which have to be studied additionally. However, we managed to see gives us so many important insights, and you will be able to see the figures for yourselves, and they will be speaking for themselves. So I'm inviting you for active and long longevity in Ukraine. Colleagues, help me, please. Here we are.
Це була коротка версія презентації.
This was a short version of the presentation.
Я прийду повільніше.
Of course, I will be taking it more slowly.
Так.
Active longevity in Ukraine. So let us begin with the age structure of the population in Ukraine.
Це дуже важливі дані, тому
This is very important data.
про що нам каже демографічний
What does this demographic prognostication tell us? By 2035, more than half of the population in Ukraine will be people aged 45 plus. Later on, you will understand why this matters, why we have been focusing on this age. And 60 plus will be nearly a third of the population. By 2022, this figure was much lower. If we can see this trend. And the causes are that, in addition to the aging population, migration and losses inflicted on Ukraine due to the war, we can see this in the number of the population and the structure. So we're going to have a qualitatively different population in this structure. Concerning migration, some important information for you. According to our study, older groups of age tend to want to get back to Ukraine more. For example, the researchers have explored that the age group of 35 years old, they stand at 38%. And if people are aged 50 to 65, they're only 48% in terms of willingness to come back to Ukraine. So people really want to get back to Ukraine if they have stronger roots here in Ukraine, if they're really anchored in this country. Spoken about 45 plus and why this is important, I'll just uncover it. With 45 plus, let's just remove this thing so that it does not obstruct the screen. This way it's better. So at the age of 45 plus, physical health deteriorates sharply and mortality risk increases. So this graph speaks a lot. We inquired from people about their perception of their own physical health. And this is what we get to here, 18, 35, 30, 34, and at 45 something begins to happen. But at 60 years of age, we can see that it's a critical deterioration. I mean, in terms of people's perception of their physical health. And this is extremely important because 45 plus, it's nearly half of the population of Ukraine. Regrettably now, Ukraine is number one in the world in terms of mortality. And the cause of that partially is the war. But we must be mindful that 85% of all of these deaths take place in the age group of 65 plus, so elderly people are affected. Mental health. We also tried to see more about mental health in Ukraine in terms of age groups. And we concluded that. Why is it moving without me affecting it? Beg your pardon. So mental health with age also gets more vulnerable. With age, a share of people feeling anxiety was also growing. So you can see that at 45 years of age, it's only 45%. At 60 plus, it's 54% of the population. And there's an important insight at that. Amongst the people age 65 plus, people feel periodic or constant stress at the level of 45%. And 84% of the people of the same age believe that they do not require any psychological or mental assistance. This is a preconceived mind which exists and pervades here in Ukraine that stops us from being active and live long, and we definitely need to account for that in developing our strategies. Digital skills, it's another important history to mention at this point, a story, because people aged 50 plus lack digital skills. Along with that, there is a barrier to acquire these skills. What we found is that we found some bit of information that 67% of people of age 55 plus never use any digital skills because they lack them. So we can see it from this graph that the lack of digital skills begins to grow steeply at the age of 55 plus. You can see it. And other studies also speak in favor of another point, that there is also a barrier for learning. 47% of people aged 40 plus are confident that all of the necessary skills have already been acquired by them. The age groups of 50 to 70 years of age, there is a high level of technical restrictions and a lack of understanding of how and why they should learn. Educational opportunities. We tried to locate some information and source information concerning how much, to what extent adults in Ukraine, mature people, people of older age, have been treated with different educational programs. And unfortunately, this information was lacking. Something that we managed to find is very telling, highly indicative. So we found the Prometheus platform information. I'm sure that majority of you know about this platform. It's rather large. I thank you for this information. When talking about users of age, those aged 50 plus, they comprise only 4%. Older people, even a smaller percentage, represent. So Dariia education. We also inquired from people of different educations how much they heard, how much they make use of Dariia Osvita, Dariia education platform, and 61% of the people aged 60 plus heard about this for the first times in their lives. And this was a very important factor for us. In Ukraine, there are 229 universities of third age, for third age learners. There are hundreds of students at them, but right now it's only 0.3% of the population aged 60 plus. Economic employment, something that we have already mentioned today. A lot of studies prove that having a job, being employed, this is a very important bit of people's well-being, making sure that they can wake up early in the morning, they want to look after themselves and take care of their own health. So we see in Ukraine at 55 plus people begin to get employed much less. So this was according to the information that we managed to source, and only 27% of them get employed at this age. So we can see a drastic decline in employment at this age in Ukraine. Some of the sources name this group of population the ones that are not included in the labor force at all. So this is also a very good reflection of our distorted perception within our society, how we perceive people of mature age. Along with that, we also managed to find that 67% of women and 69% of men have been confronted with ageism when trying to get employment at the age of 50 plus. All this against the backdrop of the general restriction and diminishing of the potential labor force in Ukraine, but the readiness to work. How much are Ukrainians ready to work at older age? Let's look into that. Is this just a matter of ageism, or is there something else behind it? We leaned on the studies for people of older age, 60 plus, but to answer whether they were employed, whether they had additional income, whether they were looking for jobs or not. And the information is as follows. Amongst respondents aged 60 plus, 67% were not even working, not looking for work, and only 5% were looking for employment. And something that struck me most in this study was that we raised a lot of data where representatives of different age groups, because we started from the young people as opposed to older people, mature generation. So we questioned them about to what age they would like to continue working, to what age they would be ready and willing to work. And only 16% of the polled all of the age groups claimed that they would be ready to work after achieving 61 years old. Another important slide here that contains information concerning the economic welfare for the people of older age when people retire. We know that a substantial share of retirees unfortunately draw the pension of up to 5,000 hryvnias, and the top things that they spend their money on are, of course, utility bills, food, and medicine. And these are some of the not very positive factors that we have to account. 62% of the people aged 65 plus have to limit their expenses to afford medication. 62% of the households unfortunately have debts due to their very small incomes, and people have to limit their expenses. Also, we found some information that 92% of people aged 60 plus are forced to save for something to pay for housing, their own rented housing. With age, something else that grows is isolation and feeling of loneliness. Because when people are out of active economic life, they do not go to work and they are not active in social life, they are confronted with loneliness. Which is why this economic and social activity also matters enormously, these contexts that people need to maintain. So loneliness, how does that impact people? 3 in 10 people aged 65 years of age live alone. This doesn't seem to be that high as a figure, but 8 out of 10 people of older age feel lonely. And this loneliness, this is their subjective perception. It's not something that is identified by having some people living around you. See, they may have some relatives, but also feel lonely. We also have to talk about care, that a lot of people in Ukraine have senior people and they need to take care of them. 60% of Ukrainians households have such people. And this work falls on the shoulders of fully abled women of working age who have to take care of these elderly people, and they don't know to look to. And so life, and predominantly such women have to take care of these elderly people. So it's every second woman in the families with people in need of care. Along with that, 87% of families have never used paid services for elderly care. Partially, this is down to the fact that this is our culture, that we have to take care of our nearest and dearest. And partially, it's also down to the fact that our market of private services is poorly developed. We have some information that only 9% of communities have at least one registered service provider, and only 16% of all care services are non-state. About women. This information is highly valuable. We've also spoken about the fact that they have this additional burden to carry in terms of elderly care, children care. But women in Ukraine are more vulnerable and predominate in numbers. So with age, the care of such women in population increases significantly due to a number of reasons. Usually they have lower than average pensions, and they're underpaid, of course, and they're also confronted with discrimination due to their age and gender, and that's why they're more vulnerable. According to the statistics, as we can see it, with age, the share of women in the population structure begins to dominate substantially over men, and this vulnerability of women essentially identifies the vulnerability of the whole society. Urban environment. We didn't find the information to corroborate our findings in numbers. So the urban environment remains very important for elderly people because certain changes, age changes begin to take place which require for people to move differently, to have a bench to rest, for example, to have a playground on the sidewalk, especially tailored for people. So there are some barriers in place for elderly people to make sure that they can navigate urban spaces more actively. Energy crisis, we all know about that, how poor lighting affects the people of older age. It's very difficult for them to navigate the city in the dark. And these are definite additional risks for them, which restricts them even more in terms of leaving their houses and interacting with the society. We also had a look at violence and fraud, and we have to be mindful that every 1 in 3 calls about domestic violence comes from older people, and the main victims here are women, but the number of men in the share of victims are also increasing because they get affected by their children, adult children, due to financial conflicts. Also, fraud is another thing which affects both young and older people. 16% of young people and a larger proportion of older people become prey to fraudsters. And of course, opinion matters also concerning how people should be treated in terms of their age. So most older people usually get confronted with different kinds of barriers. We inquired it from people of different age groups, asking them, what do you think about the categories of people who are faced more with the barriers and preconceived opinions? So they said the people with disabilities, elderly people, and low mobility groups, they are most affected. There are also lots of contradictory opinions concerning employment for people with disabilities, and the least acceptable role for an elderly person is the role of a subordinate. So on the one hand, what we see is a positive trend. The Ukrainians are claiming about their readiness and willingness to support people of older age. However, on the other hand, we also see that only 2% of volunteers are opting for helping elderly people, senior people who live in their neighborhood. So this willingness is there, however, in practice, it's not evident. That's all from me. Thank you. I know that this data may look pessimistic, however, I still think that it can and must be changed. There are lots of different countries in Europe whose legacy we're studying. They have been faced with some, if not all of these. But at least it takes unifying efforts from the state, society, business, and the social sector and donors, because it's only together that we can overcome these barriers. And I think that we stand a very good chance process to turn into a society where longevity will definitely be a true longevity, active living.
Дякуємо, пану Ірині. Пану
Besides this, Irina, and just as I have said, today we have gathered together not just to argue about problems and state issues, but also demonstrate solutions in order for us to address these issues in a systemic way. So now I'm inviting Dariia Marchak, the first Deputy Minister of Social Policies of Ukraine.
Вітаю ще раз, пані Дарино.
Hello again, Ms. Dariia.
Тоді до головного відразу.
So let us get down to business at once. So why do you think senior age in Ukraine is still at the peripheral of the society and its attention, and how can that be changed? We suppose it is at the sideline. Any topic will be sidelined that we will be talking about and raising just in the kitchen spaces. You know, I began to raise such issues in my kitchen, speaking about people of senior age, when I get to understand this distortion of the expression older age, senior age. So raise your hand if you think that senior age is 50 years old plus. No. So this is a fantastic environment to be in, because usually when we speak about older age, the majority, well actually when we speak about people aged 50 plus, the majority of my interlocutors usually use the word older age when talking about that, with all of their consequences, meaning that these are the people whose physical and intellectual capacity is declining, they're less agile, less mobile, etc. So in fact, when I came to realize that older age in Ukraine has been so very much distorted in Ukraine in terms of the way of thinking, when I saw the classification in the UN and the WHO organization, where they say that older age is 65, around that, but prior to that is adult age. And in general terms, I'm still considered to be young, and I'm very much flattered by that and comforted by that in terms of the classification by the WHO organization. So it seems to me that we in our society unfortunately segregate against people very seriously. So I thank Mr. Ivanchyk and you, Ms. Oksana Tokirova, my favorite ex-colleague, for picking up on this topic and starting to process that. And I'm very happy to welcome today's event, and I hope that you will be able to see these numbers, and it will prove useful for as many people to see them as we can afford it. So the two figures that impress me from the study is that only 27% of our population still keep working at the age of 55 years of age plus. So it's too early to speak for these people to go and retire. It's true, they retire, but as a representative of the Minister of Social Policy, I get to see quite often people who come to us and they ask for financial support on behalf of the state because they cannot find themselves a job at their 50, 55 years of age. And God forbid if they're aged 55 years old plus, if it's an IDP and a woman, this is a disaster. And another number that struck me, it's the 60% of women who are forced to take care of their elderly relatives. Because indeed, if you have a look at the international benchmarks, theoretically, we are supposed to afford a huge market for services to be afforded to people of older age with disabilities, for childcare, but we have this market, which means with all of this pressure of elderly care and taking care of their nearest and dearest has to be shouldered by women, which means that women underwork, underperform in terms of their career stage, which means that they will get low wages, so to say, punishment for being a mother. And then, as someone who deals with pension policies, I also can tell you that women will have their average pensions about 30% lower, because women will always, unfortunately, draw a lower pension and career rate will belong shorter. So we deprive women of this fulfillment due to the fact that we force them to look after their children and the elderly, and then during retirement they continue being responsible for these age groups. So all of these numbers, they comprise a huge challenge, and we have stated that very clearly in our demographic strategy that we as a society have to get adapted to this increase in the average age and embrace this policy of active longevity. But it was very properly put by the ministry, the minister, not just because we require people in the labor market, but also because we want everyone in our country to feel safe and quiet growing old. Because I'm afraid of growing old, not just due to the physical appearance. I'm afraid of it just due to all of these challenges, and I want to make sure that Ukraine becomes a country where people are not afraid to get old. And I suggest that we will move to 90 years of age, where we will be called people of long age, eternal longevity.
А які бар'єри ви вважаєте найглибшим для людей 45
I still think the most important for people to the state is doing
Бар'єри, знову-таки, дуже добре показані в
areas.
слайдах.
You can see them on the slides very well.
Так, дуже грубо узагальнюючи, я би сказала,
And
що перше, це
to generalize it, I would say there are a couple of them sort of stereotypes in employers' heads and people's heads. Oftentimes we hear people say it's not the right time to learn. I mean, what if you wait a couple of years until my retirement? I don't have to learn languages. We have lots of different stereotypes in our heads towards themselves. We need to, we talked to with Ilona Kirova, like reference you in this conversation, Ilona. We discussed employment. Ilona said something I was surprised with. She said, do you understand that the biggest ageism centers and HR offices, if there's a 30 years old person working in an HR department, I mean 45-year-old person for such HR specialist is a later level. And I get it. When I was 25, when I was 30, I thought 45-year-old people are but in reality, we need to rebuild our HR policy because the most of the right HR policy is not just about the right attitude towards people 45 years old, but it's a matter of attitude towards a woman with a sick child, who's sick all the time. We say, I'm not going to hire that woman because she will be always on a sick leave. It's a matter of stereotypes in HR policies. It's a matter of attitude towards people with disabilities and veterans and now IDP. So inclusive HR policies is not about declarations. It's a matter of specific practices. And thank you, Viktor, for Astarta's readiness to work with different inclusive HR practices and to create a business consortium that will be willing to change their HR policies to make to every person, regardless of their sex, age, and situations in lives, understand they can find themselves in the labor market, and they will find help from the government. Ukraine builds upon European democratic model. Do you think we're closer to this inclusive economy, or we have to do a lot to get to that level of understanding of silver economy? And from stereotypes, we have
безбар'єрної
lack
і
of
тих самих послуг з догляду. Сьогодні анонсую буквально за пару
accessible
годин буде
infrastructure, and in a
презентація
few hours there will be a presentation of ministry strategy
сфери
on the
послуг,
development
соціальних послуг
of
і
social
послуг з догляду.
services
Це
and
послуги,
care
які є
services.
одним із ключових
Services that
для
are one of the
соціальних
key
послуг. Про що мова? В Японії
components
приблизно
of
30%
social
економіки
services. In
це
Japan,
економіки
30% of
економіки
economy
сфери послуг з
is
догляду. І
care
коли ми
services
бачимо
economy.
ці гарненькі, красивенькі, дуже
And
затишні
when
японські будиночки для
we
людей
see
похилого віку, це
these
та сама сфера послуг з догляду.
elderly homes in Japan that look
У нас
nice,
в
that's
країні,
one of
як
the
вже
policy.
проговорено, поки
But
що
in the
ця
country,
сфера тільки на
this
початкових
industry
етапах розвитку.
is at its
Але
early stage
для
of
того, щоб
development.
ми говорили про
But in
таку
order
ефективну економіку,
to
срібну економіку
have this effective
і якісне
silver
і гідне
economy
життя у будь-якому віці, нам конче потрібно
and the life
розвивати
with
сферу
dignity, we
послуг
need
з
to
доглядом
develop our care
за
services
людьми похилого віку, людей з
for
інвалідністю.
people of
Крім того,
older
для
age
нас
and people with
критично
disabilities.
важливо
Besides, it's
розбудовувати
important for us
інфраструктуру. Я, на
to
жаль, тут не бачу сьогодні пані
develop
Тетяни,
our
яка
accessible
чудово.
services
Пані
by
Тетяна точно розповість
Tetiana. Here she is. We will
безбар'єрність
be speaking about accessibility
і
in barrier-free
третє важливе питання
environment.
це
And the
насправді
third
питання
thing
того, щоб
is
наші люди в будь-якому віці відчували себе
like
ще
for
і
people
соціально
of any age feel
залученими. Тому що у нас,
engaged
крім того,
socially,
що немає
because
інфраструктури
a
для
part
роботи, немає
of
можливості
having
для
more
частої
infrastructure for
безбар'єрності, у
employment,
нас ще й немає ось цієї
accessible
культури
infrastructure, we
таку
don't have this
максимальної
culture
соціалізації в будь-якому віці.
to socialize people of
І наостанок
different
питання.
ages.
Тобто ми
And
можемо
the last
констатувати,
question,
що
so can we,
держава,
is it safe to say
бізнес,
that
суспільство
government,
переходить
businesses,
від
and the
планування,
society
усвідомлення до дій?
transitions from planning to
Однозначно, у нас вже затверджена
place?
стратегія
Yeah,
демографічного
absolutely.
розвитку.
We have a
Зараз
strategy of
дякую
demographic development
Астарці і команді Рубан
that
Літвінова
is
за те, що
approved.
ми
Thank you,
працюємо
Astarta,
над деталізацією, поглибленням бачення,
for
яким чином,
being with us
які детальні кроки і проєкти ми маємо
in
всі суспільство країни
detailing our
разом
strategy.
реалізувати для того, щоб змінити ось цю філософію
We need to understand what steps we need to implement to change this age perception philosophy with all positive effects for every one of us.
Я щиро вірю, що ми
And I
можемо
sincerely believe that together
буквально кількома такими точковими інтервенціями
with these targeted interventions, we can speed up change and social perception. We have some ideas and proposals. So I think, well, Tetiana Nikolova from Kigali visited us and she came up with an idea to run a week of adult intern. And they were very efficient, they did it. And this year, if we find enough partners, we could do something like that, like a national adult intern week. We can make some quick changes through creating guidelines for corporate HR policy that would allow them to do something more.
Завжди в цей момент виникає питання, хороша порада, тепер скажи, як саме.
When you say, like, let's make it better, let's improve it, I mean, you have to be very specific. So we need to come up with these guidelines, how to build these policies to make sure they're inclusive towards all categories of people here. And I also think that we can do a lot if we invest more into the development of basic quick skills. People who are 45, 50 plus year old, when interacting with the employer. Sometimes people have 5 unsuccessful interviews where they have to face ageism. They are not ready for normal conversations anymore. And this is about how you sell yourself on the market. And we know from our experience If your resume is well written, if you're old enough,
більше шансів, навіть
you
якщо
have more
реальний досвід і
chances,
там софт і хард скіли краще у іншого кандидата.
even
Тому
if
це
your
речі,
skills are
які
not the
такі
best
дуже
ones. So
ну, як, відчутні, які, на
these
наш погляд, можна
things
було б зробити достатньо швидко і
could
ключове,
be
але дуже
changed
важливо,
pretty
жодних з
quickly.
цих таких
And at the
світоглядних,
same time,
концептуальних змін не
none of these
можна зробити тільки
conceptual changes can be done
рішеннями і діями уряду.
just by
Якщо
writing a law
суспільство
on
буде
governments.
займати позицію, от хай уряд зробить свою
If
роботу,
the society
якось воно
says, let the government do their job,
ну, це не та сфера, в якій це
that's
можливо.
not
Тому
going to make things happen. So this is why partnerships, specific partnerships and project campaigns
тут і зараз зміну наших з вами практик дії,
targeted
розвиток системи
changing
послуг,
our
передусім послуг з догляду по всій
practices
країні,
here and now, changing
і
our
робота з тим, щоб розуміти,
services
що,
all over the country.
завершу, якщо можна на
You know,
цьому,
absolutely.
що, судячи з аудиторії в залі, через там 5, 10, максимум 15 років ми всі будемо там.
We're going to be there in a couple of years down the
Якщо
road.
зараз ми з вами
When we
активно
turn
не попрацюємо
50
над
plus,
зміною
if we don't
концепції,
work
філософії
on the philosophy and the model of our society
15
in
максимум
10,
років, ми з вами
15
станемо
years
відчувати на
from now,
себе
we will
на собі
start
власні недопрацювання.
experiencing this.
Дякую, пані Дарино. І вам, пані та панове тут присутні, якраз шляхи, варіанти подальшої співпраці в цьому напрямку. Тож, будь ласка,
The
можемо
audience,
проговорити
we
це
can
або
talk
після
about
зустрічі, після наших спікерів,
specific
або згодом
steps,
трішки.
maybe
Дякую,
later,
Тетяно.
maybe during the
Дарино,
after
перепрошую.
the conversation. Thank you, Darina.
Дарина, ви наштовхнули
Hey,
мене на
Darina, you really inspired me to think that HR departments and businesses are responsible for ageism. I don't know now that. In Astarta company, around 11% of people are 60 plus. We're working on raising it to up to 20%. Yeah, 2080 is the Pareto principle, and we're sure that this percentage will play an important role just like the other 80. Another thing, we create departments in the presidential office and the cabinet ministers, but consider this factor when hiring people with more experience. You know, there's a great movie intern with Robert De Niro. We need interns like that in the government and the businesses. And finally, I would like to quote Bernard. We play because we age because we don't play. Let's play and let's be active. Ruslan, you wanted to say something? Is it working? Thank you, Viktor. I'm a CEO of the Employers Federation. We have 8,000 companies. It was interesting for me to listen to you. This is why I raised my hand to say something. It looks critical. So first, speaking about failures in HR departments, and you say it's not the only, not just the government to do their job, but also the business. I have to say that for the first or for the second year, we've been systematically changing our approach towards all the people. For instance, the first of January, last week I had a 63rd company I visited since the beginning of the year. I think it's also important to repeat forward to everyone. It's a photo showing the visiting some of the enterprises. Two-thirds of people were either pensioners or work or about 50 plus people who returned to working at the machinery. And also there are examples when he had to buy 70 years old. He was skillfully learned to work with the advanced machinery. In 2022, when we did some analysis and we did a research, we understood that the drafting will get more intense. So we look for ways to find resources. When we realized that the people 18 to 25-year-old, having our own, the second group, women can be retrained as workers on the field, group plus 50 plus. In 2023, we expected the young to be more acceptable to career and of course some making into the working background because I'm a representative in the industry. But we did the research among government companies, and I got to say that we received more resources based on this older category, 50 plus. I'm surprised with that, but that's really happening.
Дійсно, теж дуже цікаво було проговорити з безпосередньо людьми, які працюють, які пройшли навчання в фаховіці, як проходить там агроінститут, як проходить навчання. Що ми побачили? Це досвід, який ми бачили на проведенні проєктів. Що найефективніше – це навчання професіональної нічого не зможе замінити. Ні секторозайнятості, ні інші якісь програми поза компанії. Найбільш ефективно застосувалося щодо роботи через наставничество, через певні механізми отримання навичок та все навчання на робочому місці. Тому, якщо повертаючись зараз до роботодавців, перше, ми вже змінили підходи, як через вони можуть людей промислові. Друге, це вікова мобілізація. На жаль, звичайно, не знає рівень сьогодні верст населення, де можна брати сьогодні людей і підпорядкувати нам там.
Anyways, Victor, we need to get these people to the government because they know how to do their job. I mean, now that's the most important. Where is the support? Specific question. I mean, that's the situation on the photo with the city of Marchak. The enterprise was destroyed and the enterprise was relocated. Young people just left from Ukraine to Poland, and this guy, old guy, he learned how to work on the advanced machinery, 3 types of machinery, and he's doing well. He can work on different types of machinery, including laser machinery. And I asked him, what kind of support do you need? Salary. Okay, the salary is quite high. That's 60, more than 60,000 hryvnias. What about the working schedule? And he said, like numerous right away. So, what do we need? So what do we need? So need some support, and he's like, I got my life, and get my runs, and I'm fine. I'm using police transport and maybe some recreation. And she said, is lots of people like they need specific programs and like 2 types of programs. The first one is people employees like Astarta or Worthy, they can provide older people with specific support, medical officers and they can do this and they can deliver services to us to be certified. Healthcare services, employees provide that. They can afford that. Not all employees employees can do.
значна кількість там
There
середнього
is a
малого бізнесу і навіть
big
великих
number of
компаній, в яких там
businesses,
щось не гаразд, я скажу, ну,
companies
приблизно в нас
that
на
follow
сьогодні
this. For
372
example,
компанії
now we have
зазнали втрати
370
руйнувань.
companies who were
На минулому тижні 14
damaged or destroyed by the war. Last
було зруйновано. Тобто ми
week,
розуміємо, що
14
зразу, коли
companies'
це
premises
відбувається,
were destroyed.
фінансова
So
складова
as soon as
компанії,
that
фінансовий стан їх
happens,
значно
the
погіршується. Тому,
financial
звичайно,
situation
якщо
of the company
повернутися
gets
до
worse.
системи
So if we
підтримки, що
get back to
потребують
the
ці люди?
support, what
Чи
these
можливо
people
в
really need?
кооперації з роботодавцями? Перше, звичайно,
Sometimes
було б
cooperation with the
непогано
employer. Well,
впроваджувати
first,
нові
yes,
програми
it would be
підтримки,
nice to introduce
колективні
new
програми підтримки
cumulative
роботодавця, коли він
programs to
повертає
support
або пенсіонера, або
employees when they
людину, скажімо, там
return
55+,
in the
перед
people, 50
Що це
plus,
може бути? Можливо, це
to the
буде бути
workplace
щось
when they
на
apply,
кшталт там
rehire
перше
them.
робоче місце, те, що там у нас сьогодні роздавали програми. Це можна говорити, але це симбіоз підтримки
Three different
робітника і
programs
повага
like
і
first
роботодавця. Далі,
green
якщо ми говоримо про людину похилого віку, ми розуміємо, що точно на 100% це ми зрозуміли в
to people, and we
опитуванні,
realized that from
медичне
the research,
обстеження, страховка.
medical
Наприклад,
research,
сьогодні,
medical
якщо
insurance,
навіть медичне страхування застосовує компанія будь-яка,
even
скажімо,
when the company pays for the insurance, like in the startup.
якщо я не помиляюсь, Віктор Петрович, може
Let's
фінансовий
lift
спеціаліст,
some
якщо не помиляюсь, то ви
mistaken.
не може, ви повинні з витрат пов'язаних на медичне страхування сплатити всі податки.
Medical insurance costs you have to pay your taxes with the salary. I
Ні,
think
воно,
that's the case.
якщо я не помиляюсь, воно так і є.
I
Тобто
think
це
that's
є
the
блага
case.
для співробітника. Тому, наприклад, в цьому випадку ми можемо для певних верств
It's like
населення на
an
55+,
employee
коли
welfare.
беремо на роботу,
For 50
вводимо
plus
медичне
people, when
страхування,
we
це
hire
невеликі
them,
зміни
we
в
introduce
законодавстві, ми навіть їх
medical insurance. Well, you have to
але ну, це
against
цікава тема.
legislation.
Можемо обговорити це потім
But
на
it's a
відкритому
good
мікрофоні.
start to get started. An open mic session because we have
Але
next
дивіться, я
speakers.
до чого, давайте тоді я фіналізуюсь. Дивіться,
Get that
100%
business. It's not up. So no, it's in there. It's a
100%
business.
цікаво
When
працювати з
absolutely
людьми,
interested
100%
in
це
working
корисно
with
як для
people
компаній,
is
так і для
useful
самих
both for
людей.
the company
І
and the
100%
people.
певна політика, не
Absolutely.
певна, конкретна політика держави, звичайно, повинна бути і нам допомагати.
This is the
Яка?
government
Далі можемо
policy.
поспілкуватися, але деякі
And
конкретні
the
речі
rest
ми
we
вже
can discuss that.
запропонували.
But we've
Дякуємо,
learned
пане
about what
Руслане.
is next.
Продовжимо ці
Thank you,
процеси.
Mr.
Є
Ruslan. So
частина
let us
ширшого бачення
continue about that. So there is a possibility to speak about the national scope of seeing accessibility and barrier-free spaces initiated by Olena Zelenska, the First Lady. So this is supposed to be afforded to all people, irrespective of their age. So this activity is also a key to shaping a healthy society ready to embrace challenges of the future. So now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Tetiana Lomakina, the authorized individual authorized by the President of Ukraine on the matters of barrier-free spaces. Can I help you?
Доброго дня.
Professional?
Дійсно, сьогодні ми говоримо
Indeed.
про стратегію
Truly, today we're speaking about the strategies of active longevity. As a country, we began a conversation about the barriers in our way back in 2021 when the First Lady came up with a large conversation about barrier-free access. Back then, we were still in COVID and locked down, and you remember we couldn't go outside and we felt terribly disadvantaged. But she said, look, some people are housebound just due to the fact that they live with this every day. And that's something. We understand that COVID is bound to finish, but these people will be left in their barriers and within their limitations unless we begin positive changes. And she was helped by a great number of NGOs, CSOs. People got on board of this conversation, more than 50,000 individuals who would write saying, yes, we are restrained. And before someone could remove these barriers and eliminate them. So we had to work a lot and we had to sort out all of these barriers, communication, education, movement, etc. And they came up with this general public conversation about barrier-free environment. So what do we have for years on after we initiated this conversation? So we have a highly structurized and well-focused plan, which is reapproved every 2 years by the government, and there is a big section which is called economic barrier-free environment, where we describe how we can describe and how we can make sure that people could still have access to employment no matter what the barriers may be. So I have had just the presentation of the representative of the Confederation of Employers, but it seems to me that you are likely overestimating people's capacity and opportunities offered to people, because we definitely cannot speak frankly, but we have to face this and say that at 45, everyone begins to face age changes, and this is bound to happen to everyone. And this doesn't happen at 60 or at 80. This does begin at 48 years of age, 45 years of age. So what are we doing to prepare ourselves, our bodies, our bones, our locomotion disabilities? What are we doing to our cognitive capacity, which are exacerbated by the challenges of war? So I would like us to have a look at active longevity from a different and have a different slant on that. How are we caring for ourselves? What are we doing to maintain our productivity as much as we can? So this is the first dimension. And second dimension, if we have done all of it and still lose our productivity partially, still, will we be ready to keep learning, to retrain if I cannot retain my job for whatever reasons, just because my performance will be declining? So also yesterday, there was another discussion about studying, learning, and they said within the framework of that conversation that people with disabilities who have been through learning in order to get employment after getting their diplomas, they were offered a job, but when they came to these jobs, they realized they were not ready to do those jobs, and they had to quit them. So I understand all of us, we all want to look nice, and for people to say, wow, they have been able to do that. And I believe that what Astarta is doing and developing that, because you're doing it sincerely, unfortunately, it's not always in order to perform these positive changes that sincerity and understanding are enough. All of us have to learn. All of our teams at work have to study and learn and engage in training to be able to see how people are changing, how our cognitive function is changing due to the fact that overnight we were bombarded and we spend our night down in the hall. And in the morning, our productivity declines by 30%. So this is our cognitive function. They are accounting for that in our policies nowadays. So what's my point? The question to me was, what is the government doing? Honestly, we are not doing much. These are just early days, but it greatly comforts me that we have opted for the right track. Our pace is not high, but we can speed it up. And first of all, we are together with all of you international partners. We have opted for the right proper track. So first of all, if we have a look at the experience of the countries surrounding us, European countries in the first place, what are they up to? They come up with the compensation for the lost performance. So if people, due to their age changes, traumas, injuries, burns, stress, and different traumas inflicted on them, their performance objectively goes down. You see, for the third year running, I have been advocating in favor of this. We have to come up with subsidized workstations and jobs so that compensation could come for these people. But they say to me back, you see, all of these countries, they have structural funds of the EU. They invest their 20%, but the 80% of the rest, they get it from the structural funds of the EU. But my big hope is that URC is also planning a very important agreement for economic component of that agreement is highly important, and we will start working with the EU funds in order to start implementing some very specific and active programs to offer such compensations. Why are these programs functional? Why do they work? And why did Ukraine approve of the law that changes different kinds of approaches to people with disabilities? Not only for that, for example, if I have this medical situation that I am in, you can see that he has broken leg. She had to go. Tetiana said that she had to go to hospital to buy herself this mechanism to help her keep walking. So it all depends on our perception and how our employer will be working. We will be restructuring our processes and tailoring it to our needs. So first of all, Ukraine is doing is implementing an active rehabilitation program. As you know, Ukraine has only 3 years of transition to this new this program. Prior to that, we had to go through different medical treatments, but people were still against going for different kinds of prosthesis. People had lots of different traumas and injuries, and they could float very well in the bath. And we paid for this model, but it was dysfunctional. We didn't help people who are amputees. You see, now I can see Petro Ilkiv, and we are so grateful of the Swiss programs. Now we are implementing evidence-based rehabilitation. In the first days in hospitals, people need to draw upon full support for them to be as active as they can possibly afford it. Do all of the hospitals have it? Not into my case. I went to a usual hospital. I was taken there to by an ambulance. They cut me up, they stitched me, and they put a plaster on, and then they said, we don't have this rehabilitation program to offer you. But still, there is a big fortune for many hospitals, but not for all of them. And when we say 300 hospitals, I understand Kiev still doesn't hit this number of 300 hospitals for some reason. So, once again, my point is, we have to support actively this evidence-based rehabilitation because it allows us to get back to our active lifestyle. And this active rehabilitation is not only the first days of stay at hospital. The hospital will have to teach you how to train you how to use crutches. This will be a guarantee of you getting back to active studies, employment, that you will be eating properly, because we also have a lot of dysfunctional perceptions of that. Because for breakfast, I had a big cup of sugar syrup, and they said it was a tea. So, again, has tea ever helped people to recover, or is it an enemy to us during our recovery processes? So we have to change our attitude and treatment of nutrition, and this will also be helping our lung quality. So Ukraine right now is doing a lot in terms of children's nutrition at school. And it's unusual that sugar is limited there in portions and amounts, but if we go for it, it will definitely extend our lifespan. So, talking about the programs that we are actively implementing evidence-based rehabilitation. We're inviting everyone to get on board with this program because we want to make sure that in every hospital, from the acutest cases, it becomes affordable and accessible to people, because it's about getting people very quickly back to workstations after whatever injuries, traumas, or disruptions. So it's about all of these crutches, canes, walking canes, anything that can help people to once again become independent and get their agency. And another thing is also about nutrition. If we create all of the necessary conditions so people can get out of hospitals, they can use different walking canes or crutches. They can walk around in the working premises. There are no barriers for them, for example, because all of them have been eliminated in there. So this is also about re-equipping, readjusting working spaces. And for me, working schedules also have to be reworked. And a great example for us here is the Ukrainian railway, which is rewriting the job descriptions. Everything is being rewritten by them to make sure that people that get back from the front line can also get back to work. So I very much thank our partners from Astarta, from the Ministry of Social Policies, Dariia, Urana Tokareva, who is still very much supportive of this this area and this stream of work. I'm very grateful to all of you who have taken time to be here today to engage in this conversation. Of course, Dariia, what you said, it's quite daunting. Some people in 15 years from now, mothers can end up finding themselves in a situation when their functionality is disrupted quickly. But again, let us do all that we can in order to explore that these active programs to adapt spaces to teach our working teams grow in numbers so that people change their way of thinking. So I thank you very much for this fantastic study. When I heard about it the first time, I thought to myself, people at 50, 55 plus keep working. It's incredible. I mean, why so few of them keep working? Because the share was very small. So I very much hope that we will be able to work through all of the study step by step and present our inputs and insights concerning what we can do in order to contribute to people's well-being and longevity as a result of our working life continuing. So you mean that Astarta is a company, is a food company. We understand the importance of nutrition. And everything needs to be done to a happy medium, so we are also in favor of healthy nutrition. And now we are on to our next stage, the implementation of the demographic strategy, which invites everyone to participate, the government, the international community, and the business in Ukraine. And Astarta is not just aware of these challenges, we are implementing specific solutions, which is enhancing not only our team, but also the labor market. And here in Astarta, we are confident that any contribution to this will be also contributing to the resilience of our economy and active longevity of the society. And of course, in the long-term activities of business systems. So a small presentation video, just for a minute, for you to see what it is at Astarta that we are doing throughout several last years. Attention to the screen, please. Shaping psychological resilience with children, education throughout life or learning for life. Lifelong learning. Economy and social fulfillment. Economic and social fulfillment. The culture of treating people of age, older age, mature age, investing in communities. And now let us move on to the practical experience exchange. And I'm inviting Svetlana Mozgova, the Director of the Department of Human Resources, Corporate Partnerships and Communications at Astarta LLC. I'm gratefully grateful and appreciative of everyone joining us today. It's so meaningful for us to make sure that both the government representatives, NGOs, and CSOs and business representatives are here, because only in this kind of community can we contribute to making sure that both the country and common people will be living better. 11% of people working for our company are 60 plus years of age. So this started several years ago when we began to give it a thought, and during the war we saw lots of different problems exacerbating deteriorations for people, mental and psychological problems were deteriorating. So we came up with a project called Resilience, and our CEO was keeping personal track of all of that, and all of our line directors reported about the condition of physical and mental health to him, and this happened on a regular basis. So it's just by way of introduction. During these years, we have arrived at the following conclusion: that active longevity is not just about the proper understanding of age, but it's also about making sure that we want that our employees is not only people working for us full-time, but our ex-employees and our would-be employees, our communities where we are functional, all of them are our employees. When coming to work for us, they can plan for their lives for a long time and happily and work for us as long as they wish to. I also had a conversation with our CEO, and when we were planning for successors for our key positions, and I said that year I was turning 55, he said to me, Svetlana, it's just in your mind. You can work for as long as you wish. It all depends on you only. So this became a key phrase for me. We began to develop this topic, build on it, and I couldn't agree more with the statement. As much as we plan, as long we can work and happily and effectively. And so shaping this culture in our company, in the first place, we ensure not only for the well-being and welfare of the people, economically, psychologically, physically, and socially, but in totality, we ensure that people's economic welfare is ensured for as long as we want this company to exist. And we think that our company that develops its own communities and creates new Ukraine is to exist as long as it takes for Ukraine. So the target audience for this project are all of the employees without an exception, aged 18 when they come at the early stage and working for as long as they want. Even retiring from our company, we still believe that they are our teammates. So we set it for ourselves as a goal that people have to be aware of their own willingness to plan for their own lives, their private lives and their professional lives in our community, in our company, in a variety of different roles. So later on, I'll be speaking about that.
Професійного слово лівиці made in the new society. What are the key 5 steps that we made? We are promoting people's attitude towards our health. We understand that healthcare is about productivity, productive employees, easy employers. It depends on your lifestyle, and 10% is genetics, 15% is and 25% is employment. And we've been focusing on these areas for introducing specific medical checkups on a regular basis. We develop healthy lifestyle because physical activity is the first step to healthy life. Healthy nutrition, socializations. We make sure our employees communicate based on our interest. Well, our interests of volunteers, more than 1,000 people in the company are volunteers. And you mentioned that it's important to do retaining all the figures, how many people participate in the program, many people engaged in retaining. We have a project variety in the countryside where people in robotics and they acquire digital skills in the countryside. We do research. We survey our employees, and not just what we see in checkups is important for us. We need to understand what's going on with people. They have cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. 50% of the people have pre-diabetic conditions. We started to work and prevent a lot of people who received the medical test results. They didn't realize they had problems with their blood pressure. So we started working on preventing all this. A great deal of people surveyed have average or bad health condition. And when we asked them, entitled to retire, what would you do? 65% they said that we would stay if our health was better. 63% of people said they would like to retire because of their health condition or because they lack communication with their family. And this is what employers can do something about. This is why we say we need to make sure we help people have the right mental and physical resources, but they want to work there. They want to create senses. And speaking about taking care of your health, it's too tough in the countryside. I grew up in the countryside. I have my former classmates in the institute. We discussed that. They didn't teach us how to take care of our health. It was painful to talk about it. So we have to develop it. And in 3 years, we managed to do something about it. I mean, we have a lot of work to do, but at least we started taking our culture. Lots of women started visiting the doctors, and it's what we call shift. My page that physical activity is the important component of your health. And that's what I've always do. When companies say we don't have resources, and trust me, companies work in outside cities without dreams. You can actually do something without spending too much money. We have lots of volleyball and football teams, and we work with local schools, with the local trainers who can check your teams. You have to do for pensioners. It's not right to say pensioners. Yeah. And people they involved in Scandinavia like working by lots of employers that do that. They always win. Our teams, local teams, every week, we have these resilient centers, setting assistance, mental and social assistance for both employees and their families. So we also have 700 platforms recently. There are photos where men with their kids into these sessions to understand how good it is, how these fathers provide resources more. We have regular checks. All of our network. We have pressure meters. Yes, you just have a bit of a kick that and you measure your blood pressure. It's just a part of it. So the number of people who officially participate in our programs, how many people are part of the checkups, and people actively participate in trainings. That's the figure that we start with. It's not even think line. We understand that these figures could increase in the next couple of years, and we'll will be all our employees are productive. We will give much best to well, feel dignity and respect until they are valued as not just employees but as individuals, personalities. I mean, it's hard to exaggerate the importance of mental health. We have people working in this in the room. So I attended for lectures. I know what happens with the people on a country. People, specialists and therapists who are working for employees. We have psychologists. But the important factor is prevention. And last year we did a lot of training and learning. We had learning activities on self preventing mental and health problems online. And was communities. We invited different specialists, dermatologists, oncologists, and people from different medical institutions who specialize in different areas. Training. Existing categories like 55, 60, there's other categories where people make decisions to change their job, and when the company creates such conditions, they win. If they have a career developing possibility of raising one vertical, if they have this non-victim and succession policy, this allows people to develop and develop a peaceful identity. What the company needs to develop the culture we can relate with. We need to feel special and successful. We have different training and retraining programs, and there is always a possibility to develop and move those vertically and horizontally. Remote education, remote learning platform, and we allow our colleagues to use it. We have an atheist company present here, and we've been communicating with them and decent partnerships engage different community to make sure people don't just actually do it, but develop this personality. We have different lectures for our employees every month, not related to professional life, but it just helps them get closer to their questions. I mean, things related to mental identity and personal development. It's it gives them a possibility to develop themselves as individuals and while staying at the same company. So we did some trainings. 30% of people are 50 plus years old. When we asked them a question, why would you stay at your workplace? So one of the tractor drivers is more than 60-year-old. He said, the company is so nice and it's fun, and it really makes me want to stay. So HR teams need to work with stereotypes. And playing one that says the people just don't like. We need to use the right tools, right messages, and right mechanisms that will give you success. Economical and social fulfillment. Somebody mentioned that people of older age and communities, they often fall victims of fraud. So this is why we train our employees so that they don't fall victims. We also train more literacy, also planning. This is looking makes it uncomfortable when you plan your life, when you plan your stabilities. After turn 45, after 50, people will feel more stable when they feel like they have different stages of them. This is what I mention when I say what motivates people to stay in the company. Relatable goals and values. This is what you need to explore. To improve your development ability to see and learn what the development is. We have a culture, wrong culture, based on dignity and respect, entities of grace, but based on our attitude to people and respect towards people, regardless of their input. And also, what we talk about is changing roles. You can see that after a certain age, people can switch their roles and positions. They can quit their leadership role and become a trainer. They can focus themselves on project. They can actually engage in different projects and they can visit the company uh, based on a free schedule. And I think that home can help us retain certain cultural traditions. On the other hand, that people can reinforce teams when they get together with younger people. I think this is it. And this is what I thought about. We need to start with something. If you don't do something, you're not going to make it. You need to start with something. You need to start with respecting people, regardless of their age. And when companies start to pursue that, and when we start talking about that, when we have the propagated on these policies, and that's what we do. We talk a lot about that. And I talked to my colleagues before this meeting. It's great when people come up with examples like, what does it look like? Particularly, people need to keep coming to the company, but also they need to stay. Normally, people people join companies to work to find roles, but they quit companies because of other platforms. One is a volunteer program inside the company after working on a free will looking for a leader. So, if you have the right people in mind, you're welcome. We are proud of our cooperation with the Ministry of Local Policy. We have some nice cases collaborate with our staying peer businesses. They is showing our resilience and they do incredible things. It will help your staff to keep them in an active condition. They have really nice programs there. We want the active longevity to become expanded in Ukraine. We will do our best to make it happen. we have the people from the mostly department that we've been cooperating with on these programs. So hopefully we will keep working together. If you're an employer, you probably heard about that one that projects the human capital resilience project about active longevity. Certain tools developed there that can become a basis of such a strategy in your company. In the previous year, we had this Resilience Center project, and we are proud that it became such a support for the communities and other businesses are welcome. Corporate and without activities, without the Federation of Employers, it's impossible to develop the longevity culture in the country. And such methods will also allow us to keep the country stable, will allow us to rebuild and recover the country, and build a new country where every person with respect and when they can have safety and be successful. Do we have an open mic section? Yes, this is what we're starting actually. You've been listening to all sorts of interesting information, and that was an example of uh, partnerships among businesses, and governmental agencies, and communities, and active longevity is just the beginning. In this resilience center, we are continuing to implement it successfully. If you have any comments or reflections, this is your time.
Hello, if I may, I have an operational director, Yulia, at this company, Astarta, some field experience, the prospects for the future. For 3 years running, we have been retraining people in marketing and also of other areas. So what we can see is that the latest project demonstrates that we have 17,000 applications, 17,000, and the 60 plus aged people is 13 people. So it's a mismatch with the real statistics. It also doesn't correspond to the findings that we have already seen here in this presentation. Many more people are going for retraining today. And something else which is taking place out of the 3% of the shortlisted, I'm sorry, I'm so anxious because you're such a serious audience. I thank you for your support. So of these 3 shortlisted candidates, when we speak about training itself, we're really fine if only just 1% get through. They do not get through because going on a Zoom interview, getting an email, sending an email, Google Forms, filling them out. So people lack competencies. So for us, when we reach out then to these people and take them to the HR departments, unfortunately, people drop out on the way, and we don't have the resources to drag everyone to come in. So we don't have simply opportunities for them. And Prometheus can teach people free of charge, but you need to go for this and spare some time to that. Another bit is when people get inside the companies, and I conduct meetings with them, teaching them, briefing them concerning how they should engage in conversations with employers. So most of the time I hear from them, it's much more serious than we used to think. So when we talk to them with the candidates, we always say to them how they go onto the market, about education and training, how we're going to have them apply for training. So it's still not near HR departments yet, but they will say to me, I go to this company, I'm an old person, I'm 40 years old. It's a reality. And another point is Yulia, do you understand? I have 20 years of economic experience, but in this country, I'm no one, and people are aged 40. And my least favorite thing is my personal wrangling issue is Yulia. Imagine that a 37-year-old woman going there, lady, so she downgrades herself in terms of calling herself names. So we're not even talking about 45 plus years of age, but we simply say that people age 35 plus. I'm not there yet. I'm 34, but I can see that in a year, something will begin to twist in my mind, calling myself some kind of different degrading names. So this aging, that's taking place within people's way of thinking. So that's something that we also have to work with. When working with businesses, when talking about businesses, I'm talking about education for my part. We have tried and endeavored to work a lot with businesses. It doesn't make sense if we do not make inputs in the people. We graduate people into the market, but we still keep making investment in these people. All of the education and training right now targets young people. That's true. So education and training has to become different. We have psychological assistance software. So every 2 days a week, people come, a psychologist comes to talk to people about the imposter syndrome, perfectionism, etc. And people go like, wow, so these things can be corrected and rectified. And another thing I can also see is digital skills, competencies to preserve people's health and prevent illnesses from developing. So Prometheus covers 3,800,000 something people, but physically there is no opportunity or chance for us to take one more step and reach out for someone who simply fails to understand that they can fill out these application forms and then we will pick them up and carry them over. And not the last bit is that people lack motivation. It's a small thing, it's hardly conspicuous, but people don't know what to say about themselves during the times of their emotional downs. They don't know how to ask and call for help. That's what we are teaching them about too. This is a very unusual effect. It does work. And another little bit to mention, talking about HR departments, one must be mindful that this is a secondary symptom because the primary symptom is the leaders, supervisors project their position. You know, they will always say to me, Yulia, we're looking for trainees, but we are greatly restricted in terms of age. And I say, what do you mean? And then this is immediately discarded as an issue. So when you go to people and ask them directly, what do you mean? People will not say to you that they are an ageist. But this important bit of working with the supervisors and leaders within the company, once I asked one, why are you not hiring people of older age? And he says, I cannot swear in their presence. So it's another very subtle observation. We've spoken about quantitative, and this is a qualitative aspect. So see how deep this is engraved in people's minds. This is not clearly evident. Thank you for this time. Thank you for making it possible for me to speak my mind, and you as organizations for taking care of such things. Thank you, Yulia. Good afternoon, colleagues and peers. My name is Alana Sharova. By training and education, I'm an organizational consultant. I deal with developing leaders and organizers in terms of longevity along age. Until recently, this was just an area of my personal interest. I'm 50 years old. I'm a woman living in Ukraine, aged 50. So all of the risks mentioned in this study by Dariia, they concern me. So I have been dealing with this for myself. And at one point, we had a conversation with Dariia, and this is how I began to work with the ministry. But today I'm delighted to be in this circle, and I understand how many companies and people who represent different areas take a keen interest in this topic and are keen on it. So I hope that we can get it moved, get it moving. But just small 2 comments to make. Something that struck me, and I have something to say as feedback. First of all, this story with HR departments where Dariia even quoted me. So let me add by saying a few things. Indeed, 27% of people aged that keep working at more than 50 years of age. And they think, for whatever reasons, that they're confronted with ageism. This is their personal perception of the situation. But from my perspective, this is just the one big miscommunication, misconception, where there are not people are discriminated against. This is unfortunately a big misconception where everyone is responsible. We have a tradition always to look for an external, someone, a stranger, outsider, to put a blame on. When I just began to take interest in this, I thought it was down to discrimination. Then I began to speak to my acquaintances, friends, clients, HR department, employees, and I wasn't able to find one representative of a company who could confess to me that they had discrimination policy running. So the desire to discriminate against people, no one recognizes or acknowledges that nobody runs such policies in place. But what companies are talking about is that, first of all, it's difficult for them to attract such candidates. Secondly, they have certain requirements that they have set for the candidates. And of course, these people aren't always ready to master digital skills, go for tests or interviews or whatever. On the other hand, we say that we have simple biased opinions in our society. If I had to go and look for a job right now, I would sit down and think, how am I going to feel? What am I going to look like? Who's going to be my supervisor, etc. So I think it's not just about having to eliminate wrongful policies in the companies, but first of all, we have to come up with the first productive policies that will not just replace discriminations, but simply will come to understand special needs that people of older age usually have as candidates, what they are expecting, and how they can be helped. That example cited by Dariia, that in the recruiter's minds, that candidate is old. It's not quite what I meant when I was saying that. It's just that when the candidates aged 50 years of age plus come to a recruiter who is 22 years old, it makes it uncomfortable for both of them. Because in our mind, for a recruiter who's 22, to evaluate someone who's 50 or 55 years old, and additionally their lead who is 28 or 34, who is basically doesn't want to have subordinates of aged 50 plus, because they need special skills for that. So this is a policy of learning and training within the company, tweaking some things. So find recruiters who are 40, 45 years old, because many people are looking for jobs. And basically training one to become a recruiter is not that difficult. And at a lot of HR companies, it is difficult to find good recruiters. So if a recruiter is at least 40 years old talking to someone who's 50 to 55 years old, these people will be on the same wavelength and all of these biases will be eliminated. So it's not only down to the government policies. It's down to one entire outreach campaign about our perception of age, what it means for us to be an adult or an elderly person. Dariia spoke about young people. I suppose that we have to start all the way from school, hearing from 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 14-year-olds about people who are 50, 55, or 60 years old. And this is going to change when they go to work in companies. So changing this paradigm and this treatment of people, what makes them young or old. So this is the first thing in terms of training or education. Secondly, to make sure that people want to find employment, to create this culture of longevity. We want to say that it's healthy and it's useful, but it's only healthy when there is no stress and dreadful stress within the company, because it's not healthy to anyone, to people's health or to their self-esteem. So whatever the companies or governments are creating, the conditions in the workstations, when people come to them to work at the senior age, a mature age, elderly age, we're moving to foster this culture of dignity and self-respect, which is extremely valuable. People mustn't feel pressurized, stressed all the time, and which will be in the way of their personal strategy of longevity. So we'd like to come up with this memorandum of good HR policies, not just in order to tackle and fight bad HR policies, but to make sure that the policies of the companies like Astarta can be communicated to other companies who are willing to embrace such people, who are thinking and saying, what can we do to get more such people to come to us? So these memoranda and HR policies and a certain community of responsible businesses within the country needs to be established. It's a full idea. And I have a second comment. Let me also express it. About care. It's painful for me to hear about the story that a certain share of women cannot work full time because they have to care. And we have so many lonely people who are left alone. So this is a huge problem, but also an opportunity to take care of people of older age, because the system that we used to have in place, which is collapsed, we don't have senior people's homes or they're dysfunctional. In our society, we've always had this culture in place that we cannot desert our old members of family, and we have nothing else to offer. So lots of people left Ukraine. Others have become migrants or displaced, and no new things have been created. So when we talk about the care market of services, elderly people are remaining passive and active people are lacking. So I'm more pro for the idea, for the strategy, which is in place in many countries in the UK and America. Communities of common living, common housing, like cooperatives, where people of adult age are not passively taken care of when their relatives pay for the services to be delivered to them. But these people can unite, will finance different services, buy housing for themselves and create these services, looking after each other, getting socialized, etc. So I think it's a huge chunk. It's a mammoth, and I don't know how we can get it shifted to make sure that it's also the medical market gets harnessed. If anyone is ready to communicate with me about that, I think this is also a very proper thing for us to move along. Thank you. Try to make sure that you only take 2 minutes of your time to make our discussion more dynamic. Good afternoon, dear friends. I'm the only one in this audience, an effective exhibit, because everyone is taking care of people of older age, senior age. According to the classic description, I fall under that category. My name is Mikhailo Matyash. According to WHO classification, 7 years ago, I overcame this barrier, and I'm already at the senior age. I'm waiting. At 17, I broke an arm when I was skiing. At 57, I broke a leg when I was skiing in Bukovel ski resort. After a certain while, I also promised my employees that I would break my neck with skiing. You started feeling sorry for me, didn't you? So this is our main topic today, you see. It's a great pleasure. It was a great pleasure to hear it from the young and to think back to my age when I wasn't committing such mistakes, thankfully, because next to me were always highly effective, very creative people. Today, I'm already at their age. On Saturday, I was at a meeting of our school leavers, of school graduates, which took place 50 years after our school graduation party. So your figures do not match the reality. 42% keep working effectively, and they are all as old as I am. They keep learning, they're retraining. But according to the data offered by the Ministry of Social Policy and the Ministry of Health of Ukraine, we only have 16.5% of people with disabilities, acquired disability. This is an acquired indicator, not people who are born disabled. So what rehabilitation can we talk about? According to what law? The law dated 2005 or dated 2024? We can talk about this with Valery Mikhailovich about the law dated 2024. Why wasn't it approved in 2017? The law that we offered back then. It was better. I like the laws which are functional, and I'm a proponent of making sure that people can find a place, can carve themselves a niche where they are capable. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here, not only because I'm at Astarta's office today, but because life is breathing here, and I can see it also at the enterprises based in the west of Ukraine. I can see how all of these things are materialized. I'm not a proponent of the company. I'm not a defender of this company, but I can see very fine deliverables. So please make sure that on the 1st of September, you will come to us. We are training the best specialists in mental health at the bachelor's degree only, which is under 4 years, and master's degree, which is under 2 years of training. We have very effective methods of psychological and therapeutic work to support people. Thank you, Mr. and you, audience. Please be brief. Today we have heard it from the representatives of the government, businesses, educational platform, and now it's time to speak about on behalf of the social sector. My name is Irina Dyachenko. I'm a representative of Astarta-Kyiv charity, the elderly it's called. I'm happy to see you all. Of late, in addition to our direct line of working, we began to speak and see that this is a strategic level, that this activity needs to be done on a consistent basis. We have been studying in international experience, and we are interested in how this is done in developed economies, that there everyone is engaged in that, all of the educational platforms, businesses, the government, so this is common responsibility. And now we started to see who else in Ukraine, in charity organizations, also deals with the matter of elderly people, and we see it's a huge cohort of people who are caring.
Що кожен працює.
We see that everybody's working, is doing their job, and at the same time, we need a vision to keep doing something, but we understand that this is not enough. And what is the opportunity? Well, we have different people in the room. We need to create a common vision to make sure that new organizations want to do something. They need some guidelines. What is necessary, what is not. What are the gaps? For example, do you need to create a new training, or it's already there? So we'll be happy if this meeting will become a starting point to bring all kinds of categories of people together. It's not just the responsibility of the government or businesses or the public sector that does a lot here, so we'll be happy if it's a starting point. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here. Let's close that TikTok part and do some networking. Thank you for being here.